Everyone that's here, thank you for being here. We have a really exciting panel, really exciting discussion, and a pretty unorthodox or unique way to approach this kind of conversation. We've done a number of Cyrus webinars talking about the features, talking about everything step by step, and we'll still cover some of those things today. However, I wanted to really have a conversation about what the people that are integral to this process, whether it's the manufacturer side of things from Teledyne FLIR, the folks at DSLR Pros that are talking to customers, talking to end users, and talking to dealers, and making these things get into the hands of end users, and then some of the early adopters and the end users that have been using the Teledyne FLIR Cyrus, and talk about their experiences. So I do want to encourage any questions that you do have, put them in the question section on your panel, your GoToWebinar panel, should say questions. Type in whatever you want to know, and we'll cover those at the end of the webinar. Anything we don't cover today, we'll get together and send out an email that basically covers anything else if we do run out of time. But yeah, again, this is kind of a unique approach to this. There's not a lot of slides. It's mostly a discussion about what we're doing and seeing with the Cyrus. So I do want to do some introductions, and by way of introductions, I would ask that each of you guys just tell a little bit about your background, maybe background using drone technology, or how you're involved with the Cyrus, how long you've been working with the Cyrus, any of that kind of detail, so that those that are here in attendance can understand kind of what has made up this group of people to talk about the Cyrus today. And I guess we'll just go in the order as we're seeing on the screen. So Joseph, if you want to go first and just tell a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. I am Sergeant Joe Gramaco with Delray Beach PD. I am the drone unit supervisor. We have 6 pilots, and we're more of a rapid deployment. We have 6 drone vehicles, officers on each shift. So we kind of pride ourselves down here in Florida as being a quick reaction. We can get a drone pilot to the scene, drone out of the vehicle, and deployed in under a minute and in the air before the helicopter arrives. We've been working with the Cyrus since basically it first came out. So me and Sahil have been going back and forth. Obviously, as everyone knows, with the state of Florida, we had to ground all of our previous drones. So through demonstrations from countless companies, the Cyrus was the one we chose. Obviously, we're rebuilding the program and the fleet from the ground up. So we've been working hand in hand to make this product that much better.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Joseph. John, if you want to go next.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is John Malone. I work with AEP, which is a large utility company based out of Columbus, Ohio. I supervise a team in generation. I'm the generation person in charge of drones now. But the group I supervise, we do surveying and drilling, and we're starting inspection services. So was really excited once this came out. Was able to get a hold of Sahil with the opportunity for the IR sensor that we've been waiting for to come to market. We are a non-DJI company, so this was very appealing to us to get this sensor to use. And we have not used, we've used the Cyrus a few times. I'm ramping up to start a solar panel inspection program, which was the basis of purchasing these drones.
Perfect. And appreciate that, John.
That's about it. Yes, sir.
Kelly, if you want to go next.
Sure. My name is Kelly Brodbeck. I'm the product manager for Cyrus. And when I joined Teledyne FLIR and took over product management for our UAS division, the commercial division, we were very heavily invested in and working with DJI. We made a number of payloads over the years that flew on the Matrice and other DJI aircraft. A few years ago, we decided that that was not appropriate anymore for us to be working with DJI, and so we phased out of that relationship. We still have a couple of legacy payloads that can fly on DJI drones, but they're being phased out as well. So I looked at my business and said, geez, I need a drone because I don't have DJI anymore. So we started looking at a number of partners, people that already had drones, who are already in the market, who we could partner with and customize to our specifications and our needs and the needs of the customers that we're aware of. So that's the genesis of Cirrus, and it's basically a platform upon which we intend to hang and make available a number of payloads. First one out is the TZ-128 EOIR. More on the way. You're muted, Randall.
Of course I am. Greg, if you want to go next, sorry about that. Greg? You might be muted too, maybe not. You're muted, Greg. Nope. Don't have any audio from you. Let me see if it's something on my end. Apologize.
Yeah, well, while Greg's getting sorted, let me go ahead and go, Randall. So my name is Kevin Hale. I run channel sales and distribution for Cirrus out of Enterprise UAS. So I'm more in line with the B2B side of things. I work directly with other drone distributors so that we can get Cirrus in a position where you can work with your local vendor directly to source it, to support it, to have parts readily available. We feel like local distributors, smaller distributors have a very big role to play, especially with anybody that's an early adopter of technology. So we're very excited to work with a number of very reputable distributors to bring Cirrus directly to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. And I'll go. And then Greg, if your sound gets working, just give a thumbs up. I'm Randall Warnes. I've been in the industry 9 years, a number of different places, and spent going on 5 years at Teledyne, well, at FLIR before it was Teledyne FLIR. Been a part of the aerial thermal imaging movement from the beginning with the launch of the ZimUse XT between DJI and FLIR back in 2015. And I'm an executive vice president at DSLR Pros now. So being kind of in the middle of the Teledyne FLIR relationship, being at DSLR Pros, working with end users for a long time on this exact product, I feel like seen enough things, but I'm just the host for today. I'm going to be posing the questions that these guys are going to answer. Sahil, if you want to go, and then we'll finish off with Greg.
Yep. Hello, guys. My name is Sahil. Been working in the drone industry for almost 7 to 8 years now. I'm responsible for enterprise sales with DSLR Pros, also director of training with the company. And I've been working closely with FLIR, with Kelly and Greg, with the R&D of this drone. And prior, I've worked with other drone companies as well, like Impossible Aerospace. So really sort of understand, different markets where this drone could be used. And really excited to kind of be in this webinar today and share some good feedback on this drone.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Sahil. And Greg, we good?
Is it working?
It's working. We can hear you.
All right. Cool. Wanted to say good morning to everyone. I've been with the company since 2006. Originally with the product strategy team, helped launch our security cameras, the maritime cameras, the handhelds, and later on 2012 with the FLIR One and the Lepton camera. I was finding the first customers for that micro camera, and that's become a mature product for the company. Around 2012, I introduced the company to DJI and some of the people there, and we found Randall Warnes, fortunately for us, a couple years into that process, and made some great products and worked closely with Randall when he was a member of Teledyne from, I think, 2015 to 21, Randall, about 4 years. So we were elbow to elbow for the XT and the XT2. And just as Kelly said, around 2018-19, the government asked to create a little space between us and this Chinese company, and we've forward integrated into making our own drone with Kelly's great effort. And we're in year one, I would say, of that new product launch, and excited to get it right and make sure that our end users are happy with everything about the product. And it's probably one of the most important product launches we've done as a company in a long time. So during that time, FLIR got bought by Teledyne in 2021, and now we have a bigger resource base and a bigger sales network, and quite a lot of interest in making this product succeed. So I'm pleased to be working here with Kevin and Sahil and everybody on this call.
Perfect. Appreciate that, Greg. So, like I mentioned before, we've done webinars, and you can find them if you want to see more about specs and features and things like that. I can definitely drive you there. What I'm showing here is just like basic level stuff. We'll talk about like the things that we find interesting about Cyrus, but I just put a few of the specs up there just so that you know the basis of what Cyrus brings. But Kelly, I wanted to start with you. You mentioned the origin story of Cyrus, but because this is your baby, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into why was Cyrus made. Obviously, there was a movement away from maybe Chinese manufactured drones or working in that relationship with DJI. But aside from that, like when you were doing the write-up of what Cyrus was to be, how did you explain that? How did you articulate that, and how did it come to shape?
Sure. As I mentioned, and as Greg mentioned, we have a very long history of making payloads for commercial drones. So we have quite a network of customers and people who over the years have a variety of requests of us. We do market research fairly regularly, surveys, focus groups, all these sorts of things. So really the demand was coming from our customer base. You know, we love your cameras. We're a little uneasy about DJI. And frankly, a lot of people's complaints about DJI wasn't, cybersecurity, although that was listed. It was more about, I'm a dealer. I don't feel like they treat me so well. You guys treat me very well. Can't you make your own drone? And, that kind of pull, right? So we started listing and designing and coming up with, all right, if we did our own drone, what would it have to be? What would be the key features? So you have some of them listed here. Easy to fly, reliable, inexpensive. I'm very focused on Cyrus. The airframe itself is $5,600. The price kind of gets mixed in with the payload, which is $4,000. So together it's just under $9,700. But when we have our other payloads come out, you'll be able to buy the drone for $5,600, $5,695, and then there'll be other payloads at other price points. And depending on what features you want, you'll pick your tool, and maybe you want a couple payloads. But the idea is for this to be much less expensive than the Blue UAS products that are out there, which are all fine products. We sell cameras to a number of those companies, and they're our partners. But because we're not Blue UAS, we can have a supply chain that, while A, is not coming out of China in any kind of meaningful way, but B, is an international supply chain such that we can manage the price, we can have all these great features, and of course, cybersecurity is one of the big features. The name Cyrus, like we get asked this all the time, how'd you come up with that? It stands for something. It stands for Secure Infrared Aerial System. So infrared's one of our big heritage legacies, so it has to be there, right? But S, secure, first letter of the name. Cyrus connects to nothing. We designed it so that James Bond could not crack the code on this. Your data goes from the drone onto the SD card in the drone. A little bit of data goes onto the controller, but it's basically on the drone. It's not connecting to the cloud. It's not connecting to the internet. Your pictures, who you are, you don't have to create an account, where you flew, there's no geofencing. It's all in the hands of the pilot, and your information doesn't get out until you decide to take the SD card and put it on the internet yourself, right? So these are the key things that people ask for, and it's what we're trying to deliver, and I think we've done a good job.
So I'm going to pose this to Joseph and then to John, because I think that you being in the end user space and one being in public safety and the other being in more energy utility, critical infrastructure type space, you probably have somewhat divergent needs, but they all kind of come together on Cyrus. So Joe, I would ask you, when it comes to public safety drones, what are the things that, the boxes you need to check for your department? And I guess being in Florida, you have some specific ones, but what are the things that you're looking for that maybe made Cyrus a good fit for you?
Well, first and foremost, if any drone can fly, any pilot can fly any drone, But if you don't have a quality camera attached to the drone, for public safety, it's useless. For us, where we're a mobile deployment unit, where you have some that are fixed and remote deployments, we need a drone that's going to, one, fit in our vehicles, but also has the power of the camera to be able to detect if it's a person or an air conditioner. Knowing the FLIR product from the helicopters that we always have overhead and knowing the infrared technology, knowing that that's partnered with the drone now, we know we're getting a good product. And we've demoed, like I said, 20 plus companies to look at their cameras, look at mainly their infrared, because most of our incidents occur at night. So we have 4 pilots strictly at night for this incident. So our primary focus is we need the camera. We need the camera, we need the IR, we need to know to be able to differentiate where the suspect is, or if it's a search and rescue, where that person is. And that's where the Teledyne FLIR excelled compared to other companies. A lot of other companies right now don't have obstacle avoidance at night. Some of the bigger companies that now do, the bigger US companies that are trying to come out with drones, you have to actually turn off your obstacle avoidance. And a lot of other departments are crashing their drones because you can't see a power pole, you can't see power lines, a tree when you get further away. Where with the Teledyne FLIR, you still have the quality of the FLIR and you have the obstacle avoidance, so you can trust when you're looking down at the controller, or if you have a build-out TV screen like we do in our vehicles for a bigger view, if there's going to be a drone spotter or an observer, you can see what you're looking at without having to worry about flying into a pole. So for us, the biggest thing is ease of use and the camera. With the Teledyne, for people that have flown DJIs in the past, it's a very easy transition as well, because our whole fleet was DJIs. We had the 200s, 210s, the 300, and it was an easy training, like transition for our pilots that were so used to the other controls and the screens and everything else that you put this controller in their hands. As with Sahil when he came out for our demo, our pilots never flew this drone before. We'd never seen it. I took the controller, put it in one of my pilot's hands, and he's flying it like he's one of those racing drones. And he says it's the exact same thing. So that's where for us, for law enforcement and public safety, that all made sense to go ahead with this product.
Appreciate that, Joe. And John, what you mentioned that you're.
If I could just interject, this is the payload that Joe is talking about. So this is EO-IR. It's our Boson 640 by 512 thermal camera paired with a 16 megapixel EO camera. This comes on and off in about 2 seconds. So that's why I talk about a family of payloads. These pop on and off real easy and fun to replace.
Yeah, and John also, or sorry, Joe also mentioned the obstacle avoidance, which is done by front-facing radar. It's mostly, in the path of your flight that you can detect certain objects, but it is not impacted by night flight like the ones that are focused on optical imagery to do that obstacle avoidance. John, you had mentioned that you were primarily going to be using Cirrus for deployment on solar arrays, and solar inspection with aerial thermal imaging is pretty much it's probably the most clear-cut use case where you can obviously see the benefits of looking at a solar panel with your eyes, or with an EO camera. You can't really see defects. You could see maybe bird poop or cracks or something like that, but thermal is necessary in order to do those inspections. But what is it that American Electrical Power saw when jumping on board with Cirrus?
Sure. So first off, AEP, we've been a FLIR company for a long time, and we have a thermal expert who is actually he's not on my team, but he's in my group. So anything with AEP, all the thermal imaging and things like that go through him. So we are a FLIR company, and then it's funny, I come from air emissions testing, so we are strictly a Teledyne company when it comes to air emissions. So bringing Teledyne and FLIR together, that was just a coincidence that this would be where AEP wanted to go. But and I don't, a 320, those are available on the market. They are not, that sensor is not going to work for us for a thermal imaging perspective. So having that 640, but also radiometric, right? So there are other options on the market, but to have the 640 512 boson with radiometric, I need to know what that temperature is, because that, having a heat map, having the thermal imaging is great, but what is the exact temperature for building up for solar panel arrays? Because as everyone knows, the energy industry is in the middle of a huge transition, and AEP is right there where we're moving towards more renewable energy, and that's we can't build enough solar and wind right now to get to where we need to be. So this was our task to do this, and then there's going to be other use cases right now, like for obviously like our distribution and transmission teams where they're flying lines and they need to, from a thermal imaging, to know what's the temperature of this spot in the line and this spot. This would be ideal for this. And then the obstacle avoidance, the switchable payload, all of these things kind of came together to really point us in this direction. And then we don't have a lot of experience. My group does not on this type of this size of drone. We have our background. We started our program probably 3 years ago. We have a fixed wing for our large surveys to do like stockpile surveys, and then we have a few Parrot Anofis for small inspections. But this we look to expand to have the CIRUS kind of take over for that, along with being able to produce the thermal imaging.
Appreciate that, John. And a few things. One, you mentioned the size. You can see above Kelly's head to the left is a CIRUS up in the air. Maybe you have one nearby. Like those that have flown drones for a while, it's maybe in between like a Phantom and an Inspire size. It's not massive. It's not M300, M350 size, but it still is packaged nicely, carry-on type box that you can transport it with.
Yeah, we designed it so that you can travel with it and put it in the overhead compartment of any 737 or above aircraft.
And if I may chime in here, I'd like to really kind of supplement what both John and Joe shared. So, Joe, let's start with you. You mentioned the 640 by 512 camera. Now, with respect to specifications, it's one of those things where it's one thing to see it on a sheet that says, oh, this is 640 by 512, but it's really something else to compare CIRUS to its contemporaries. Not all 612, not all thermal cameras are made the same, essentially. 640 by 512 is the spec, but they come in various different qualities. And one of the things that Teledyne FLIR does very well is quality control. So you can be assured that the cameras, as they come off that line, they are much more crisp than comparable cameras on DJI products, for example. The next point, really kind of speaking to what John was saying, is workflow. He said it himself. He's a FLIR company. Well, there are implications for that when you're talking about data and processing. There are many drone companies out there. Many of them have thermal cameras, but the difference is the thermal images are proprietary. They're not using a FLIR thermal image, which means that if you're using other thermal assets like handhelds, for example, you now have two different kinds of data. You've got FLIR data and then you've got the drone data, and that can cause problems after the fact, especially in reporting. Whereas with CIRUS, if you already use FLIR handhelds, this image will go in the exact same processing software that you've been using this whole time. Nothing changes for your staff downstream as far as the data is concerned. Same data in, same data out.
Appreciate that, Kev. And both Joe and John mentioned Teledyne FLIR as a brand, and that's something that early on, even while I was at FLIR, that we really focused on the idea that a manufacturer that has been around for 40 plus years, that is now getting into this unmanned space, is not going the blue route, so it's not restrained by a lot of cost inhibiting, or I guess cost increasing elements that they have to put into the airframe to get that distinction. One of the people that speak most eloquently about Teledyne FLIR and what it is Greg Negler. I've known him for a long time. Greg, do you want to just talk a little bit about that kind of Teledyne FLIR brand trust, what you can expect when working with a company like Teledyne FLIR, and kind of the quality of the products that you produce?
Sure. Well, I mean, first, I think Joseph, John, and Kevin all said it pretty well, that what you get with us is a longevity of supply, a kind of partnership mentality, a kind of truth in advertising. You know, it is what it is. We're going to make it better, but we're going to stand behind the product for a very long time. And I think we're the only company in the industry who can say they've been doing aerial thermal since 1979. You know, the Sikorsky helicopters that Joseph talked about, they're still flying FLIR cameras, and the electrical power and energy infrastructure inspections that John talked about haven't stopped since, you know, 1979, basically around the same time. So the company went public, continues to innovate, but it's not perfect yet. So we're not going to come out and tell you that this drone is everything you want today. It's the first year of a product that will evolve. We make a lot of sensors at Teledyne, you know, including the chem biodetection, gas imaging for methane mitigation, you know, of course, temperature measurement and seeing at night. But I think it's a journey, and we're excited for everybody who's on this call listening to this, because, you know, we consider Cirrus as a viable alternative to what you see in the market today. And Teledyne FLIR, as a company who's been doing this for 50 years, will be doing it 50 years from today. You know, when you think about standing up a drone fleet or investing some capital to get some training and learn how to use these cameras, we're a safe choice. So we're pretty much made in the USA. We do get some things from outside, but when we do get things from outside, they're from sustainable long-term sources, so that we can guarantee, you know, you won't strand your inventory, you won't strand your investment. We'll stand behind the product. And of course, the brand and the people and kind of the way we work with end users is what sets us apart.
Appreciate that, Greg. So I do want to talk about features more, and I stopped sharing my screen just so that we're looking at the panel and we can focus more on the conversation, and then we'll pull it back up in a little bit. But Sahil, you've been consulting not only on Cirrus, but you were at Impossible before, and you've talked to other drone manufacturers in the past. Do you want to talk about some of, like, I mentioned standout features, but what are some of the things as far as the user interface or how you use Cirrus that maybe either sets it apart from other manufacturers or makes it so that it is kind of what you would expect? Like Joe mentioned, putting it in first, you know, putting it in someone's hand the first time, that's easy to fly and kind of responds in the way that you expect.
Yeah, so but before I get into that, I really want to sort of highlight what Greg said, that, you know, the FLIR stands behind this product. We're not telling a customer that this is a finished product right now. Every day we're improving it, and then that's really, I like to kind of stand beside FLIR and my clients, and I'm pretty sure Joseph and John could cite a second on that we have been taking care of them from day one. So that's the structure which we have with DSLR Pros and FLIR, and I'm really supportive of that. Number two, in terms of how different this platform is as compared to other competitors, let's really talk about the timing of this airframe. Okay, so we all talking about the resolution of the thermal. So we do have 640 by 512, which is radiometric. There is really no other drone in the market, which is a non-Chinese drone, which could sort of offer this sort of resolution on the thermal. Our competitors have like a lower resolution 336, but we all know the industry standards have become 640 by 512, even if in public safety, even in energy, or any other use cases out there. The simplicity of this drone in terms of, you know, moving away from someone who has been used to flying a DJI versus flying this, let me tell you that once you hold the controller in your hand, we have made it so simplified that there's not like thousands of options on the controller. They're very basic options. You know, we have only put in there what the pilot needs to see, and everything else has been taken off. So that really makes the whole controller, the mission planner, and the ground station more intuitive and very user-friendly to use. Along with that, one of the points which we haven't discussed, that, you know, we do have a MSX technology where you could overlay the daytime on thermal, which is again a really value-added feature to have in this drone, which no other drone could offer at the moment. And then having a 16 megapixel with 128x digital zoom. And I'll be honest, I have been using the zoom, and we have been improving the quality of the zoom, and I'm pretty impressed with what that digital camera could do with that level of zooming capability. And then we have 5x of digital zoom on the thermal. So let's not forget that. And then along with that, hot swapping capabilities for public safety, and again, the cybersecurity and the data remains on the drone itself.
Yeah, and you're bringing up an interesting point that I haven't really thought of, but in the drone industry, I mean, I know a lot of folks in it, especially representing different manufacturers. And it's interesting, Kelly, you being on this call, you being the guy that basically makes the decisions about what gets developed, what new payloads, what features get prioritized, etc., that you are basically on the front lines in a way that I haven't seen a lot of product people be. In the drone industry. Maybe they talk to a few end users and gets that feedback, but you've really been putting yourself out there to be a recipient of this and working so closely with us, whether it's Kevin and the dealer network within the industry, or Sahil directly with end users and being an end user himself. It's interesting because these changes that are happening, this constant evolution behind Cirrus, is real time, and the people on this call right now, if they're putting in their input within the chat section, for instance, that is going directly into the person that's making those changes, and I can't think of another place where that happens. So maybe I would pose this as a question to you, Kelly. When you receive feedback, let's say for a new payload, etc., as a manufacturer, is your roadmap a foregone conclusion, or are you being quite receptive to this and trying to be proactive rather than reactive to what the market wants? And how are you collecting that information?
Well, it's definitely not a foregone conclusion. We don't want to put things out there that people don't want, and there are reasons why someone might not want something. Maybe a product, a payload will have features, but at the wrong price, or maybe it's a great price, but not the right mix of features. So there's a lot that you take into consideration. There are people out there that are very passionate about certain features, and these are must-haves, and they get very emotional, but they might be 2 or 3 voices out of thousands. The payloads that we have in progress right now are definitely a reaction to the feedback that we've gotten so far, and feedback that we've always received as we've been developing this program and what it can be about. So things like gas detectors, things like LiDAR, things like fancy lights, things like better zoom. These are all things that get asked for. Each of them has a timeline associated with them. Something like LiDAR is very difficult to do on a drone the size of Cirrus. But we are looking at it, right? So it's really about people letting us know what they want. And yes, we have, as Greg and you, Randall, mentioned, a very open and interactive process. My email is kelly.brodbeck@teledyne.com. You can email me at any time with whatever comment, feedback, question. I get to all the emails, and we have a pretty big fleet of beta testers that have been with us from the beginning of Cirrus and have crafted and given us feedback. We're here in Santa Barbara where we developed this. The weather is usually pretty nice. So I've got guys that work for energy companies in Iowa who go fly when it's freezing, and they have to inspect a wind turbine, and they find performance things that we just can't test here. So we get on the plane, we go to Des Moines, and we fly around and see what's going on. That's how we've developed this thing, and that's how we'll continue to evolve it.
And you're bringing up a very good point that's also a bit different with this product, but also a necessity that I am asking for and have been asking for. Sahil, you just got back from LEDA, the Law Enforcement Drone Association event in Nashville. I know that you did a demo for Joe in Florida. I don't know if you did a demo for John or if we just sent a unit out, but I think that one important thing about the Teledyne FLIR Cirrus and why we're doing this roundtable is that seeing is believing. When a new product comes on the market that you know, a lot of times you don't want to go on face value, you want to get that experience. So we're trying to get to understand who is really waiting for that hands-on experience. And so I've put a survey in the chat several times. If you take that survey, if you are interested in having somebody come to you with a unit, fly in your area so that you can see this firsthand, it's been challenging. I mean, there are beta testers, there are a number of early adopters, and so maybe you have someone you're close to that is either using it or that you could see it yourself. But we are trying to expand that to get more of that experiential testimonial type thing for the Teledyne FLIR Cirrus. So if you are interested, fill that in. I do want to talk again to John and Joe as end users of this product. Before we go into what might be coming next for Cirrus, what are the things, the features, whether it's software features or the hardware expansions, payloads, things like that you'd like to see? And again, we'll start with John and then go to Joe this time so that John, you could get your stuff out first.
Sure. So I think what we for sure want to do, need from a software is getting to that point where we can program a mission and, you know, set it up and then be able to program that and hit that flight. That was a selling point that we definitely are hoping that does come to fruition. It's extremely important. In any type of, you know, they talked about different payloads. I think that's going to be useful for AEP. You know, possibility of LiDAR, anything like that. That's good. And it's very difficult with you know, the controller itself I don't know how to enhance the viewing of the controller in the sun. We've had issues, not so much, I mean, with this, but I don't know how, you know, if that's something that could come in the future as well. But that's, you know, other than that, nothing in particular from a utility standpoint. Oh, actually, no. Have the ability to possibly, and this is something that is new to us, to have the files like work. We just started with a company called Drone Logbook. They're going to be used for our assets. If that's an option too, to basically a way for the files, our telemetry files, to load into Drone Logbook. I'm not sure if that's something you guys have dealt with yet or not.
Noted, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Joe, do you want to throw your wish list out there?
Oh, it's a big wish list, but I'll stick to the point. For us is, you know, obviously the FLIR camera, you know, far and away is, based on all the other competitors, night and day. Obviously we would like a better zoom option so we can really zoom in and tell, you know, really what is that person running behind the house, or is it a dog? Something like that. Something that we're kind of missing from having the previous drones, where they were well far ahead of the game before this everything at least happened in Florida. We also need a better clarity for the daytime camera. I know FLIR is definitely the state of the art for nighttime, but we need that healthy balance, and that's where we're kind of missing, is that we have the platform, we have the controller, we have the FLIR. We just need that healthy balance to have the daytime as well, because a lot of times we fly Overwatch for our SWAT team, where they put the drone over that house, and we need to know if, you know, someone's coming out of that back door, or they hide it under a car, under, you know, a doormat, something like that. And that's something we're kind of missing. I know it's there, I know it's coming, but that's something where we kind of want more. With Sahil a lot too. He knows I bombard him with my wish list and requests, so he can probably give you a whole laundry list of what my pilots want, because I trust in my pilots. They're the ones that have this in their hands every single day, every single night, and I'm very critical and very thorough with, you know, critiques. And I think that's kind of how you guys want it, is that you want someone that's going to be able to tell you, hey, you might want to work on this, fix this, do this. And I understand it's a it's a newer endeavor for you guys, and we're coming from driving a Ferrari and we're back down to a Lexus type of deal. So we're trying to bring it back up to the Ferrari, and that works well with hand in hand with the end user from both an engineering perspective and from a public safety perspective of giving us honest opinions and feedback. So for us it's all camera, GPS acquisition, making that faster, more seamless. I know sometimes depending on what areas you're in, you may have a connectivity, issues just because of the area you're in. And we've been working well with Sahil and getting the firmware upgrades and everything else coming to us. And that's been helping and been constantly getting pushed out. One issue that we have been seeing, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is, for FAA rules, they request some sort of a strobe. Doesn't really say what color the strobe, but they want some sort of a strobe affixed to the drone, so that more often than not, when we have a bigger incident, we have this drone flying overhead. We don't go more than 300, 400. That's kind of like our understanding with the helicopters when they do come in the area, because we do fly at the same time as the helicopters. So if the helicopters are looking at one location, they'll tell us with the pilot, hey, go check this location more thoroughly while I'm looking at the overall. That drone is going to help, that strobe is going to help that helicopter know exactly where that drone is going to be. So that's one thing that we've been kind of having like a little wish list, not quite sure how to integrate that. We made our own makeshift strobe by just attaching it to the drone, and it's working for the time being. But I think that'd be something more down the line that would be beneficial. So there's more avoidance with whether it be other drones or other helicopters, because our fire department, they have their own drone that they fly over burning buildings or bad car accidents to detect thermal and everything else. So we need that kind of differentiate and know who's flying where, whether it's by visual or by the radar.
Appreciate that, Joe.
We're working on the built-in strobe, by the way.
Yeah, and Kelly, this is a question for both you and Greg, and it's kind of like, where is Cirrus going? Obviously, like saying, here's our roadmap and here's when to expect it is not the way that works, but it's more like, I know there's a new firmware coming out pretty soon. You can maybe give some status on that and what that might look like. Also, right now Cirrus is only being sold in the United States. If there's any information of when international customers outside of the United States might expect to be able to see Cirrus in their neighborhood and start using it there as well, and anything that just kind of indicates that constant evolution or that constant growth that Cirrus is behind, anything that you could share on that front, both Kelly and Greg.
Sure. Well, with regard to outside the United States, we're currently going through a certification process in the EU. They have very specific rules that manufacturers have to comply with. In the United States, a lot of the emphasis on safety and appropriate procedures is put on pilots by our FAA. In Europe, a lot of that is put on manufacturers to basically idiot-proof a drone product. So we're going through that process. Canada, Australia, Japan, these are all places that we're looking at really right now, studying the regulations and what we need to do to adapt Cirrus to the local customs. But Europe is such a big place, that's really the next logical place for us to take Cirrus. As far as the general roadmap, I mean, it's just more, right? So Joe is asking for more zoom. We understand that and we want that and we're working on it. More processing power on the drone itself, RTK. I mean, the features are out there. People know what they want. People have experienced, precision mapping and all sorts of things. So we're aware of these things and we're driving toward them. The original Cirrus that we have on the market now, and it's been out there for about 6 months, is designed to get out and give the basic FLIR goodness and features that people say they want to have. And then from there, we just add more features. I'm very committed not to being one of these companies that says, hey, here's our new drone, buy it if you want all this cool stuff. We really want this to be forward and backward compatible. That said, we might have a second drone that has a lot more processing power built into it. But this Cirrus that's out there is the ground level one that has lots of great capabilities at a great price, and we will always have that available for people with upgrades to it, both through firmware and through new payloads.
Appreciate that. Greg, did you want to add anything as far as future Osiris?
You're muted, Greg.
I can't see Greg, so. Nope.
The lips
Okay.
are moving, the sound ain't coming.
Something happened with you. You fix that. We'll move on. And the next thing I was going to tap into before we get into the questions from the audience is I was going to pose it to FLIR, but instead I'm posing it to my guys Kevin and Sahil. The question, so we, DSLR Pro, serves as the exclusive master distributor for the Teledyne FLIR Cirrus as it stands right now. So basically every unit that gets manufactured by FLIR goes from us to either a dealer, then to an end user, or directly to an end user. I wanted to ask you guys, Kevin and Sahil, what do you think has been like the benefit of having that relationship? What things have you seen and have we been able to provide to Teledyne FLIR that maybe would be unique? In regard to a manufacturer working so closely with a reseller?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randall. So I think working directly with FLIR and then working directly with the end users, really understanding their use cases and what exactly they want from the drone, and us able to understand those specs needed by the customer, and us able to directly communicate with Kelly and Greg, and to react instantly on that, I think it's really a very valuable and a crucial factor for this partnership. And again, as Joseph said, all the feedback which comes to me directly, that gets transponded to Kelly directly, and he's able to kind of react on that in a timely manner. So having that sort of relationship is really valuable. And then me and Kevin being on the front end and spending time with the customers and really understanding the details of exactly what they need is really something we understand, at a higher level, and we could sort of communicate that with FLIR to kind of build this drone so that it fits in that block properly.
Yeah.
Kevin,
Working now? Randall, is it working? Yeah, okay.
Yes. Oh, we can hear you.
Just two more things I wanted to add to Kelly's comments.
Yeah.
The first is that if you don't want a demo of Cirrus now, or you want to hold off, tell us why, because we do want to hear that. We want to maintain this engagement. If there's some feature, like Joe said about, nits of brightness on the controller, or something that's keeping you from wanting that demo, let us know so we can let Kelly know and the product team, et cetera. Because this is year one, and with these other products, I mentioned the Blackhawks and the Sikorsky helicopters, security cameras, it took us a while to learn OnVIF and VMS, software intercompatibility that those products needed to be widely adopted. And so that was an engagement with customers that we want to carry through into this drone launch. So we're not just here to engage to promote. We're here to hear what you need and want and be that supplier of choice, be that viable alternative. And the second thing I wanted to add is that, legal regulations might accelerate things. We're still not going to compromise quality, but there are going to be probably more states like Florida that are specifically requesting alternatives to be stood up. And so as those events occur in 2024, 25, things could get very interesting, right? We already see a lot of interest internationally, but we do think that in Europe and some of the other markets that are outside of the United States, they could develop regulations similar to what Florida is already pioneering. And so the time to trial the drone, to test it, give us feedback on what it needs to be useful to you, whether it's electric power or security and public safety, we're very keen to make that happen.
Appreciate that, Greg. Kevin, did you want to say anything?
No, yeah, I wanted to, again, mirror Sahil's sentiments. I feel like, our position as the master distributor is we're really the friction point. between both end users and distributors, and then the manufacturer. You know, Sahil is uniquely positioned in dealing with end users. I'm uniquely positioned in dealing with our other vendors. We understand the difficulties in working with some of these legacy drone companies. We feel those pains, so we're able to tailor our approach to Cirrus accordingly. Responsiveness being one of them. You know, Joe, you can probably speak to this, you know, the frequency with which the firmware updates are being pushed, the fixes that those firmware updates contain. You know, we're plugged in a way that I don't think very many companies are, to be able to kind of shepherd this along, because this is really a foundational drone. This is the genesis of an SUAS program at FLIR. You know,
Yeah.
Small form factor, low costs.
Training and service, right? After sales support for, you know, the hardware, making sure the hardware does the solar panel inspections that you need. Randall was instrumental in kind of pioneering some of that work. We have an ITC department that is also, you know, it's been around for 40 years, and they're refreshing their course content to really make it. You know, the hardware purchase is just maybe 10% of starting your drone service business or starting your drone fleet at a public safety organization. So we're activating that too, and we want to hear what you need for that part of the value proposition to work.
Yeah, and just to kind of highlight on what Greg said about the after sales support, like even with all my clients, when I'm selling them a drone, I tell them, right, selling is an easy part. Like our job start when the sale has been made, and then where there's a necessity for after sales support, that's where we highly believe in. And having FLIR, you know, backing us up in that regard is really valuable. And you know, of course, we have been taking care of, you know, Joseph and John from AEP, but after sales support is really, really crucial when it comes to like a new technology.
Definitely. So I do want to get to the question and answer portion of all of this, but I do want to wrap up that kind of idea by Kelly was mentioning how there could be 2 or 3 people that want a specific feature. There are some users that are closer to Santa Barbara, for instance, and they might get heard more than the guy in New York or, you know, Minnesota, or where there's cold environments. So I think that we have served as being kind of this repository of all this information, not only from feedback for Teledyne FLIR Cirrus, but also just being in the drone industry as long as we have. And hopefully this structure, it barring like any confusion or any sort of uncertainty of why you can't purchase directly from a manufacturer or how we're looped in, that it is providing a conduit to make a better product and make that better product exist faster. So as I mentioned, and I'll mention it for the last time, and then we'll go into Q&A, I'm going to put this survey link one more time into the chat section. If you do want to have a demonstration somewhere near you, if you could let us know, just indicate that you're interested, and we'll reach out to you and try to work that out, because it is the hardest part of launching a new drone product by far, is that you can't really virtually give, you could show spec sheets, you could show videos, you could have testimonials, but really it's going to be you seeing it yourself. There's only so many places in the year that you can go and experience a live demonstration at trade shows and things like that, but even those aren't going to be as tailored to your use case. So we're trying to get out and trying to show more people Cirrus. So if you could let us know, either like what Greg said, why you don't need this now, what is missing, or if you are interested, we'll try to make that happen. Now to the Q&A. I usually would have left more time. I'm going to pump through some of them quickly, just like quick rapid fire. Something that has been a common thread through all of this is, what about remote ID? Remote ID rules are supposed to go into effect in September. Teledyne FLIR Cirrus was thinking ahead, and so there is a remote ID module. Kelly, do you want to just touch into how that's going to work for those that are?
Nobody needs to do anything. So Cirrus is equipped with all the hardware that it needs for remote ID. We went through the process with the FAA to do our declaration of compliance, submitted, I think, 80 pages worth of data. They looked at it and said, this is great. We actually exceeded some of the performance specs that the ASTM standard calls for. We will activate it and start broadcasting with a firmware update probably August. maybe September. We have to do it by December, I believe it's 14th. We'll certainly hit that date. So,
Perfect.
and pilots need to do nothing. So it'll just start happening when you put that firmware update on there.
Appreciate that, Kelly. And I forgot to do this first. If you do want to reach out to anyone from the panel, likely just find them on LinkedIn. I didn't put emails up as I usually do, just because I didn't know who would want to interact directly. But here are the names of everyone that's on the panel. And then if you do have any questions after the fact, you could just send an email to cyrus@dslrpros.com, and we'll direct you to wherever you are trying to get. So another one that could go to you, Kelly, is NDAA compliance, blue listing, green listing. There's a number of these questions that are throughout. Go for it.
Yeah. So NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. Cyrus is a commercial product. We do make military drones. There are features of our military drones that our military pilots count on and insist on. We try and keep our commercial and our military products separate for a whole bunch of reasons. So we have not put Cyrus through the certification process. That said, the NDAA has a very long list of mostly Chinese companies that they don't want any purchase of any components, not even a resistor or a capacitor from any of those companies. And we comply with that. We buy nothing from any company on that list. We have a letter that we can provide to any interested parties, basically stating that. I think it's important to point out that through Blue UAS and NDAA, the American government is expressing concern about cybersecurity and identity security and data security with drones. So it's a real thing, despite what others will tell you. And we comply with the spirit of all that, A, by not buying from the wrong parties, and B, by having Cyrus, by design, not connect to the internet, to the cloud, etc., so that your data is secure. That is our promise to you. With regard to Blue UAS, we could go through that, but we would have to change our supply chain, we think, and that would cause the price of the product to go up. And we don't think it will enhance the security of the product one iota. It is secure, it connects to nothing. And then the green thing is, we just really don't need more regulations, and certainly not from private companies. So we're not doing anything in that space. Cyrus Designs speaks for itself.
Appreciate that, Kelly. There's questions about flying in weather and in the rain. So let's say wind and rain, and we showed the IP rating, which is IP54, and that's both on the controller and the aircraft itself. But either Sahil, John, or Joe, do you have any experience flying in weather, whether rain, wind, anything like that? Any sort of just experiential stuff you want to share on that front?
So yeah, I mean, when I was in Florida demoing the product, it started raining. So we did fly the drone in like moderate rain. Had no issues with it at all. I was in Nashville last week. Again, flew in rain with no issues at all. Drone was flying perfectly fine. Joseph, have you ever had a chance to deploy this in a real-time situation in rainy weather?
Yeah, we have. I mean, obviously, we try not to fly it in a monsoon for obvious reasons, but have flown it in the rain, and there's been no issues whatsoever. For our city being right along the coast, we do get the gusty winds, and also being down here in Florida, we are going to get those strong storms in the afternoon. So, we have flown it in some winds, and there's been some, little issues when you get the, 15, 20, 25 mile an hour wind that's going to blow the drone away, because it's not as big as the 300 RTK, so it's not going to have as much meat behind it to kind of fight that wind. But really no issues whatsoever. The pilots are able to control it, and we haven't had any issues with the wind or the rain per se.
Appreciate that, guys. So we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to ask one more question, and then there's a number that we're going to have to follow up on. So I'll send an email out to everyone that's in attendance. They'll just say Cyrus Q&A recap or something like that, and we'll literally go through and answer every single question that's on here. There's some of these that will just be a lot to answer in a short amount of time. But I do want to talk about, lastly, the lack of connectivity. Kelly's mentioned this, Joe's mentioned this. It is part of the Cyrus security is that this is not connected to the cloud. It's not connected to the internet. You can't connect to the internet. So Kelly, I think this is best served for you. There's questions about third-party app capability, Pix4D integration, FLIR Thermal Studio integration. So anything that could enhance the ability to either digest that information, to tune the images. What does the roadmap sort of look like for third-party integrations, and how might Cyrus users expect to be using that versus the things that they can't do, like maybe drone sensor or whatever in the future because of the lack of cloud connectivity?
Yeah, so this is about creating APIs so that Cyrus can talk to these external software programs. And you can imagine there are literally hundreds of companies saying, you know, create an API for us, right? So it becomes a matter of prioritizing. Pix4D is definitely toward the top of the list. Drone Sense is difficult to do, but we get a lot of requests for that as well and are looking into it. FLIR Thermal Studio is our software. There have been some bugs in getting the images to load in mass into our own FLIR Thermal Studio. I think we have that largely worked out, and that's part of a firmware update that's coming out very, very soon. We do have people using, in the power industry, FLIR Thermal Studio. They collect pictures, radiometric data, they throw it into FLIR Thermal Studio and make nice reports. They like to use the region of interest box, which tells you the hottest and coldest thing in a given region within the image, which turns out to be very helpful for inspecting windmills and substations, that sort of thing, solar arrays. So that's all working at a basic level, but if you want to import 10,000 pictures, it gets a little gummed up, so we're working on that. But yeah, we do recognize that there are important third-party software out there that all drones should be working with, and it's part of what we're working on. I would just tell you Pix4D is at the top of the list.
Perfect. All right. So there was a question about price. We mentioned this before. It's $96.95, just under $9,700 for Cyrus. That includes the airframe, controller, the TV128, which is the EOIR payload. So that's all included for under $9,700 for the person that asked the price. We are going to wrap this thing up. Kelly, you and I probably have some work to do on getting some of these questions. I'll work with Sahil and Kevin as well to get some of them, so it's not everything dumped on you. But honestly, appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate your thoughtfulness and giving us questions and the opportunity for us to educate you a little bit more about the experience. And also thanks to Joe and John. You guys are the users of this. You're spending your time to help us get more information out there and more testimonial to what the experience has been. So I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to be part of this. You'll be able to see this recording within the next hour or so if you go back into the link. Otherwise, we'll be posting on YouTube and sending more stuff out. I think that's it. So thank you. Thanks to everyone that was here today, and we'll talk again soon.